videos on Sola Scriptura, which sorta is just precept. It's presuppositionalism applied to the canonization, the preservation of Scripture, and God's providence in preserving His Word down through history, whether we have a history of it or not. And this is one of the criticisms that those people that are anti-Sola Scriptura, which is like your Catholic churches and your like Eastern Orthodox, Greek Orthodox churches, is that they deny Sola Scriptura. But what we're going to see is it's absolutely necessary. It's we might say Sola Scriptura is from the impossibility of the contrary. Because once you understand presuppositionalism, you'll understand that Sola Scriptura, the Bible is self-authenticating. And what we mean by that is it provides us with the preconditions of intelligibility. So if you go back and listen to the series on presuppositionalism, and if you're not familiar with it, I think it would be in your best interest, it would behoove you to learn presuppositionalism, whether you're against Sola Scriptura or not, because you're going to have to be confronted with that argument. If you're denying Sola Scriptura, usually what people do is they make I would argue, is a false dilemma. They're saying, well, because you can't prove what books go in the Bible and who were the authors, the original authors, because one of the criticisms you commonly hear online is people say, well, how do you know Matthew wrote Matthew? Well, that's dragging it into a historical rubric where you have to say all these things can only be answered using historical analysis, and so you have to appeal to the church. And this is really what they're trying to do, is that when they say the church, they're either meaning the Catholic Church or the Orthodox churches, but they want to drag it into that, because once they can get you out of Sola Scriptura, then they think they can get you into their area where they can control you. But what you want to see is that before there's any historical reasoning about anything whatsoever, you have to start with the philosophy that can validate, that can justify belief in historical reasoning. So before you can argue about history, you have to presuppose that the laws of logic that we utilize today apply in the past uniformly, universally, and that everyone in the past has to be rational. Everyone has to be rational in the past, and that actions have to be subordinated to causation, and sense perception is valid in the past, and there aren't contradictory laws. I mean, you assume that the worldview that we engage in now and that we utilize to try to reason now, we assume that has always applied that way. Well, that's only true if the God of the Bible exists, the God that reveals Himself in Scripture, the one that upholds all things by the word of His power, the one that puts wisdom in the inward parts, that made us in His image and to have dominion over the earth. That's only possible if all these things are already true. So for somebody to try to argue, well, you don't know what the Bible is unless you go to history, and the church tells you what the Bible is, and you only know this through history, you can't even make that statement. You can't even make a historical argument unless you start with the theology that's contained in the Bible. That's what we mean when we say it's self-authenticating. So for somebody to deny Sola Scriptura on the basis of history, there is no history unless what the Bible teaches about theology is true. The God of that book has to be the God of history, or there is no historical reason whatsoever. So it's necessary, and we're going to address some of the arguments against Sola Scriptura as well. But it's self-authenticating. Somebody who denies Sola Scriptura is always going to drag you into history, and all you have to do is ask them, well, how do we know history is valid? And they have to appeal to a framework, a philosophical justification for reasoning, and that presupposes the God of Scripture. So you have to start with the Bible regardless. So we're going to look at some of the arguments that are commonly brought against Sola Scriptura, and let me know what you think in the comments below, all right?